evening's Sahitya Akademi's Kavisandhi, we have with us distinguished Telugu scholar and poet Shri Afsar Mohammad with us, who will recite his poems as well as share his views at this evening. To begin with, I request Dr. K. Srinivas Rauji, Secretary Sahitya Akademi, to please formally welcome Afsar Mohammad ji at this Kavisandhi, offering Angavastram as well as Sahitya Akademi publications. Afsar Mohammad ji is an internationally acclaimed and award-winning South Asian scholar working on Hindu-Muslim interactions in India. He also focuses on Muslim writing and Telugu studies. He teaches at the University of Pennsylvania, Philadelphia. He recently published a volume of his selected poems from Telugu to English with a title, Evening with a Sufi. He published 5 volumes of poetry, 1 short story collection and 2 collections of essays on literary theory in Telugu. His latest work is about the Muslims of Hyderabad, titled Remaking History, 1948 Police Action and the Muslims of Hyderabad, with Cambridge University Press. He previously published a monograph, The Festival of Peers, Popular Islam and Shared Devotion in South India, with the Oxford University Press. Let us together heartily welcome Afsar Mohammad ji and this Kavisandhi. I request Afsar Mohammad ji to please take the chance.
Thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here. After a long time, I think I came here before COVID. And then I came here several times, different roles. I still remember when I was here for a translation workshop. And then I translated some poetry from Telugu to English. That was one of the beautiful moments. I still remember, this was like yesterday in my memory. I'm very thankful to your generous introduction. Srinivas Rao garu, my long time friend, almost like a family. And I'm very grateful to you, Srinivas Rao garu, for inviting me here. I see a lot of my friends here. Vishnu, Keshav. I also see new friends. So it's like today I take this opportunity to introduce me as a poet and also give you a sense of how my journey as a poet started. I'll read some poems. And I also explain, I also tell some stories because I'm basically a story wala. In the introduction, you were mentioning about my previous book published with Oxford University Press, The Festival of Peers, which is actually about, of course, you are all familiar with this event, Muharram. But I focus more on, even though it's an Islamic event, I focused on Hindu participation of this event. There are so many stories that Hindus narrate about this event. Also, I published a piece in a quite interesting journal in US, which is called Journal of Vaishnava Studies. The essay was about this Muslim event. Can you imagine publishing about one Muslim event in a journal of Vaishnava studies, but there is a reason why they published it. So the piece was about the title itself. Actually, the title is my forthcoming book. Sita is Fatima. Of course, we all know about Sita. We all know about Fatima as well, the daughter of Prophet. How one village folk performer understands the life stories of Sita and Fatima, coming from two totally different religious systems. One coming from image worship, one coming from an abstract idea of religion, right? So Hinduism and Islam. So that is one of the movements. I actually documented 50 narratives that connect Ramayana with this Islamic history. Actually, the Festival of Peace also is documented in Gugudu. It's a village in Anantapur. Gugudu means Guha's Guru in Telugu. Gradually became Gugudu, the nest of Guha. So this village is known for the worship of Guha. So how Guha helped Rama to cross the river. But on the other hand, the villagers tell the story of Guha during the public event of Muharram. So they connect this Muharram, Sufi practices, and then Guha's story. So this is like one of the most effective experiences from my village. Just like Srinivasrao Garu, I also came from very remote South Indian village. So my home in this village is so close to Rama temple on one hand, and there is this huge field where both Muslims and Hindus practice the rituals of Muharram. So see, you can imagine what kind of background was like influencing my personality. So remembering that village, because most of the imagery in my poetry comes from my village life. I begin with a poem. I'm not going to read, sorry, I know a lot of Telugu friends here, but I see more non-Telugu friends, so I'm focusing more on addressing non-Telugu audience today. But I will give a sense of like how that poem sounds in Telugu, little bit, not much. So this poem is called, the title is in English. This is the book I just published in English, Evening with a Sufi. These are like translations from Telugu into English. It's published in New Delhi by the Red River Press. So the English title is Childhood Lake. In Telugu, it is Chinnapati Cheru. ఇక్కడేదో తడి తడిగా తగిలేది, పసిపాదాలు పరిగెత్తుకుంటూ వచ్చి అలసిపోయినప్పుడు ఇక్కడేదో తడిగా తగిలేది అమ్మ చెయ్యి. దేహాన్ని బార్లా చాపుకున్న ఆకాశం మబ్బు తునకల పొడుగాడి గుంపుల మధ్య తుంపులు తుంపులుగా వెన్నెల ఉప్పుడిని రాచేది. చూపులు నడిచిన చోటల్లా ఒక కళ వెచ్చ వెచ్చగా నిలిచేది. కానీ ఎవరో నా కోసం ఎప్పటికీ తరగని మాటల పెట్టెని దాచి ఉంచాను. So that is the Telugu version. See how it looks like and reads like in English. There used to be little water here. When little feet got tired of running here, they felt a cool touch, like their mother's hand. When they rushed in, like the wind, over birdhouses of reed grass, over tamarinds, brilliant with tender shoots, along the thin paths stretching wide among green fields, over the scaffolds in the fields, two hands would wait with a cool embrace. The white sky sprinkled moonlit pollen onto the clusters of clouds. Wherever I looked, there a dream breathed. Someone kept for me here, the chest of endless words. Someone else blew 1,000 bamboo flutes into the air and left. Now, when I come to the same lake, it shows me a heart in shattered pieces. Why? Back then, I flew to far off places. We would arrive on breezy wings, swaggering in from a daydream. We would land as gaudy as dragonflies. We would swim in the swirling lake. We would drape our bodies on the green shores. We would toss the outer world of our clothes and unto thorn bushes. As a pitch darkness covered the rest of the world, we would harvest our lamps. Flowered boats from the lamps of maidens danced with glimmering heads. Our young bodies played hide and seek with the light on the lake. Then night blossomed like a lightning wine from our teenage cups. How many young caresses teased the shores? There used to be little water here. There used to be little water here. But now it screams with all the dryness in the heartbeat of the earth. Thank you. So, the imagery actually, that poem, whenever I read, to myself, because I read this poem like in several places, in several countries, in several languages. Whenever I recite it, whenever I listen to the people who translated this poem into their own languages, into their own cultures, and then recited in their own lands, every time this takes me back to the village. So this village has a very interesting name. Some of you know from my previous book, Chintakani. Chinta is tamarind, right? Kani is the yoke of tamarind. So that's what the name itself is very poetic, right? And the village was so poetic too, with all those beauties. And I actually want to go and see how the village now appears. I'm sure my friends tell me that, oh yeah, everything is same as you left. And then during this trip, actually, they invited me to this village, but I couldn't make it this time. I'll be back in May, and then I'm going to be there for like 2 weeks, something like that. I just want to relive those moments from my childhood. There are so many memories, because even now, when I write something, when I think about writing something, this village comes to my mind. I feel like I am sitting in this village, in some remote corner, or in this temple, or in like this Islamic site of Muharram. Because those are like very common sites for us, because we were used to play there around it. So I want to go there and sit there and then write something. So that feeling between life and writing actually made my personality. So whatever I want to set through my writing, that actually is nothing but reliving my past, rethinking about my school days, meeting my old friends, playing with them, talking to the elders who used to share wonderful stories, not just about Islam, but also I grew up basically like my grandparents, they used to tell me stories from both Ramayana and Bhavan. My grandfather was actually a Sanskrit scholar who mastered Ramayana, Mahabharata and Bhagavata. Entire village, when he would recite poetry from Ramayana, Mahabharata and Bhagavata, the entire village that would gather there and listen to him. So this was like one of the beautiful moments. I'm not sure whether such things are still happening or not, but I feel like those traditions should continue. These shared practices, these shared stories, these shared experiences, is not the soul of our culture, right? So that is where I focus more on. And then most of the poetry, also like sometimes I also write about some poor Muslim families living in this village. So I want to talk about the stories from this downtrodden Muslim community. So there is one poem, it is called Jane Kali. This is a sad poem, not unlike the previous poem. This is a sad poem that reminds me of one of the Muslim personality figure from this village. His name was Usman. But the villagers used to make fun of his name and they used to call him Usman. So, Usman. Usman. The sky is hanging. The sky is hanging like your cloud-colored body, trying hard to hide your body in a dirty pajama. You scared all the children away from the river. A body like a wound peeks from your torn shirt. You are the one street dog, doggedly haunted by a ball. I remember the evenings. You would run to my mother, complaining to her that I was with the naughty kids who never stopped teasing you. We used to make fun of you. I also remember, with just one cup of tea, all those burning emotions inside you would cool down abruptly. Now, I don't see much difference between you and me. We are the same, except I don't have tears in my eyes. Mother is not here to share my stories. Mother is not here to share my stories. It's not. Times never change. Only the roles change. Times never change. Only the roles change. Several years past your death, I now realize you are a wound as tall as a human body. I am the wound now. I am the wound now. And when I go to sleep, the wounds open like huge doors. And amidst the wounds, I still tease you, man. I still tease you. Heckling you. Shwan. Thank you. So one of the tasks I took in writing poetry for the last 4 decades. This is the complete volume of my poetry. I published in 2019. My book was poetry from then to now. So, but one poem that I want to read today is about hunger. Hunger. The history of my 5 fingers. The history of my 5 fingers. That is the title. Yes. Yes. My 5 fingers, 5 oceans set aflame. They act all grown up now. But I know their history. Nothing is new. Fingers are the things that grow faster. As they grow meaner. Since I know the history on my fingertips, whenever I see a baby's jasmine-like tiny fingers, I guess their future. Very soon, they will be the fingers of thieves, tearing out the pages of the moral teachings with ease. You know, eyes grow faster when they are the eyes of fingers, and fingers smell secrets faster. The history of hunger begins with the fingers. Wow. How useful it would be if my fingers could learn to steal more efficiently. Innocent in the Yuga, they sometimes get caught. No, they are not ashamed or embarrassed about anything. Poor kids, poor habits. My mother yells at me endlessly. Big eyes spy on us openly, catching us red-handed or full-handed. For a while, my 5 fingers act mature, displaying adulthood. The very next moment, they go back to their intuitive hunger. How old you are? My 5 fingers. You are never old enough to have learned your lesson. You have not learned food etiquette. Low and mean fingers. My low and mean fingers, you never learn lessons. I always lick my fingers at the end of a meal. They are like the messy feet of a chicken. It is a Telugu medium. Messy feet. Yeah. When it is time to stop, still eager at the edge of the plate, poor little fingers, what can they do? It is the fault of their birth. How could they know about manners? Hunger has never cared for manners. Hunger has never cared for manners. Hunger is a flaming ocean, hiding forever in my 5 fingers. Thank you. So, some of the movements, like particularly the movement that I just described, those might not be my own experiences. Of course, there were moments when I was like really, we had hungry times in my own family, but some of the experiences I take from my friends, my villagers. So when I talk about them in my poetry, that is how we like begin to write poetry, right? Otherwise, we do other stuff, right? We write histories, we write sociological works, we do other things. But you write poetry when you begin to identify with the experiences that that resonate with your own self, right? So this is a movement that allows me to engage with the world. It's a conversation I keep on doing with the world, right? For other conversations, I have other resources. I teach very tough topics. I have one student here from University of Pennsylvania. He took my classes there. So happy to see him. I teach. When I teach a class, it's a different personality. I go to the classroom. I try to gather some information, and then I connect it to experience. But most important for me is to make that experience students' experience, right? That is what teachers do, right? And then I have other roles. I write history books. The books you are mentioning, they are basically history books. So that role is a totally different role. Like being a historian, you have to talk about certain events, certain moments of history, right? So you try to look like an very objective observations, right? So you got to, you become an outsider when you write about histories. You are not an insider, right? You write about some historical event, some historical figure, right? But see the title of this poem, History of My Five Fingers. In the post-1990s Telugu, not only Telugu, but also in other languages, because I'm in USA, I also engage with other languages and their literary cultures. I read a lot of African poetry. I read a lot of Latin American literature. I read about American poets. So what I noticed for the last 3 decades, in most cultures, there is a return to identity. Theoretically, we call it identitarian term, right? So at this term, we started talking about our own identities. How these identities work? What do we learn from them? How do we talk about their histories? And then their literary cultures. If I'm a poet, because I'm a poet, I strongly believe it, I'm a poet, even though some people don't accept it. It's not a big deal for me. But I strongly believe it's not because I cut the sentences and then make the line reason. It is because I feel that my basic emotions, they are better expressed in poetry. So, poetry is my first love in that way, right? The other things that I do for livelihood, like teaching, writing history, those are like other things, right? But anything that I want to talk about, just like talking to a good friend, so it's a basic conversation. For me, it's a street talk. So you are walking in a street, on a street, then you hear so many words, sentences, and then you kind of attach to them instantly sometimes. You feel like those words, they are becoming part of your personality, your mind and soul, right? So then, I cultivate this mind to embrace others. So poetry is not just about self, right? Poetry is also about others. I need to talk about, unless I learn how to talk about others, there is no way that I can become something, some entity here, right? So my entire existence, it's a conversation between self and other. It's about me and then my community, right? Wherever I am, I might not be in India right now. I might not be in that same remote South Indian village now, but I still keep up that conversation. I still talk to my village. And then also, I talk to my immediate neighbors, neighborhood, immediate country, immediate language. So see, but there is a shift here in terms of emotional environment. There is also a shift here in thinking, right? So this is all about finding a fine balance, right? That's what we want to accomplish throughout our life, right? We've got to find something that allows you to find, connect with the world, right? And then see, but where is this, how this is going to begin? I believe all this stuff begins in language, right? We need to learn, if you want to write a new poem, if you want to address new concerns, if you want to communicate with the new generation, if you want to articulate the very immediate pain and frustration, of course joys, and then intense moments that you are experiencing with your immediate society, immediate community, you should be able to learn a new idiom. Linguistics always say that for every 20 miles, language changes, right? But my belief system is totally different. For one person to another person, it's not about distance, 20 miles or 10 miles, it's about people, right? So language changes from me to you, from you to him. So there's a lot of distance between the language you speak and the language you speak. There is also a difference in the language men speak and the language women speak and the language kids speak, right? So how do you find the balance between all these different varieties of language? So to articulate that pain of language, well, this is my poem. The accent is the essence of any language, right? The accented word, that's the title. In Telugu, this is actually Keshava Kumar knows this very well. Yasa, my Matrubhasha. Yasa is accent, dialect, is my mother tongue. Matrubhasha. How are we doing? Are we doing okay?
Yeah, of course.
At any point if you are feeling bored, let me know, send me some signs, and then I will try to read your signs and then...
That's a really Telugu.
Telugu version? I need to find it. This is I don't know why I wrote all this poetry. Can you find Asana Matupata? Should be... Yeah. All my words until now were cut off from their blood. All my words until now were cut off from their blood. In the bustling market of a few words, not even words, whose milk are blood. Souls are just bankrupt bodies. Words born out of wind, nothing but wind. Words don't know the music of feet standing on the ground. Words like arms with no bones. Words like a pile of meat whose vertebrae crawled away. Here is a bustling market of meat. A market smells of meat. A market piles of words sounding like poetry. Words are stillborn babies. Their blood has gone bad with white poison. Their words have gone bad from the accent. Have been poured, shared, and bathed in white poison since I was little. And now I want to speak out for myself. But my voice is in chains. My voice is in chains, and my language is poisoned, and the language of my time is poisoned. We live on the brackish water of life. You know, my words are blood smeared. They are slave words. When they open their arms to the sky, the old world begins to shudder and sweat. I go back to my mother and her tongue. I go back to my mother and her tongue. I speak from my accent, the real accent from my mother. Thank you. Of course, thank you. I'm not going to read my entire poem.
Okay.
Just few stanzas to give you a sense of that sound of Telugu. It's a beautiful language, right? మాటకి రక్త సంబంధం తెగిపోయింది. మాటకి రక్త సంబంధం తెగిపోయింది. చిరిగితే పాల్గారని పోని నెత్తురైనా కారని అక్షరాల తిరణాలలో ఆత్మను ఏనాడో ఖాళీ చేసి దివాళా తీసిన ఒట్టి దేహాలు. మాటలన్నీ గాలికి కుడతాయి. మట్టి తొక్కిన కాళ్ళ చప్పుడేమిటో తెలియకుండా, ఎముకలు విరిగిన చేతుల్లా, వెన్ను జారిన మాంసపోగు మెలికల్లా మాటలన్నీ మళ్ళీ గాల్లోనే చేస్తాయి. ఇది తెల్ల విషంలో వ్యక్తి విరిగిన భాష. చిన్నప్పటి నుంచి మెదడులోకి వంపుతున్న తెల్ల విషాన్నే మింగి మింగి స్వరం కదిలిస్తే చాలు సంకళ్ళ చప్పుడే వినిపిస్తుంది. బతుక్కి ఏ కవచం లేకుండా అసహజ శృంఖలాలతో పుట్టిన తరం నాది. మీరంతా సృష్టించిన తెల్ల నలుగల మహాశక్త సాగరాల్లో మా నల్లని చెమట ఎక్కడెలా ఇంకిపోయిందో నీటి జాడల్ని వెతుక్కుంటూ వస్తున్నాం. ఒళ్ళు మైమరిపించే పరిమళాలు కాదు, పదాలకిప్పుడు ముచ్చెమటలు పుట్టిస్తాం. పదాలకిప్పుడు ముచ్చెమటలు పుట్టిస్తాం. నీళ్లతో కన్నీళ్లతో సహా మమ్మల్ని వెలివేసిన చోట ఉప్పెన పుట్టిస్తాం. ఇప్పుడు యాస నా మాతృభాష. Yeah, it's not easy to bring that power. Even the sound itself is like, I always feel that difference in a original poem and then translated poem. Right? Of course, the entire poem, the pain in this poem is to talk about that variation, right? So we are all writing, even in our mother tongue, we are all writing translated poetry. All our poetry comes from English, right? So symbols, imagery, and then metaphors, even sentence making, that actually comes from English. We are losing this ground, we are losing this mother tongue. So the entire sense is to, yeah.
It's also there.
Right. This is actually, that is what I believe, right, is through my, right. So So I actually want to read a poem about Hyderabad because I always feel, even though I'm not that familiar with Hyderabadi childhood, but there are so many things that I really want to talk about Hyderabad. And then there is this language of Hyderabadi dialect that shares both Urdu and Telugu, right? Even a single sentence in Hyderabadi Telugu, that's a combination of Urdu and Telugu, right? So it's a very natural flow. It's not artificial when they are using Urdu. So very common, very usually like they kind of say, you are like walking on the street, "Arey, mastu pareshan chestunnaru bhai." So say mast and pareshan. Two words in a single sentence. "Hey man, you're making me so worried." That's the word, right? If I translate that into standardizing Telugu, that would lose its freshness, that would lose its intensity, right? So my effort, I guess because the previous poem also tells the same story, right? But now I want to talk about Hyderabad a little bit because I'm also like promoting my new book in that sense. Right. The title is A Rain Lost in Hyderabad. A Rain Lost in Hyderabad. You don't feel like it is raining in Hyderabad, right? It's huge, and then this huge structures. You don't even see, oh my gosh, is it raining or not? Then you see all this sound, but you don't see the water falling down, right? Since there is nothing like evening here, I just dream an evening every bit of my sleep. When the trees erase their shades, when the sky dries out its final sunshine, a cold wave scoops me. I rush to my nest and hide in its wings before the dark night takes me. Never know if this was raining since morning or just began this noon. The lives that unfurl in the noons don't know morning breezes. Hyderabadis are called late latifs. They get up at 11 o'clock and then look for breakfast and chai, right? So they don't know morning breezes. Getting up past noon, I realized the alarm was tired of alarming me and sighed itself off. I am best at reading time in reverse. I am best at reading time in reverse. Who is born when all the rains and winters lost their hope of moving. Hyderabad is my altered self. Hyderabad is my altered self. It's a dreamless sleep. It's a sleepless dream. Awaking, sleep under a nap. Thank you. So the last one, then we can talk about poetry. I look forward to your questions. The title of this poem, because this is the last poem I'm going to read today, the title also is Last Acts. It's a Telugu ghazal. As you go, pause here by the road's bend and look. For what you meant to write, wilted in your gaze. In the beginning, there might have been the word, but in the beginning, it was the final word I could dream. Brimming with sadness, the globe of smiles turning, sadness burning, I was the warmth of a cold snow's flame. In the end, there might have been the word, But last night, I was the wildfire that ignited your dream. Even time doesn't know the sound of tumbling seconds. The naked cry of two bodies melting into a stream. On anxiety's tender leaf, in the lick of flames, when the body is the fire pit, consciousness won't return unless you have left it. As you go, pause here by the road's bend and look. What you could write, burnt under the eyelids' pale smile. Thank you.
Any questions from the audience?
You can ask any questions. I'm a nice gentleman. I'll take them open out.
Since it is the politics very often disturbs the politics often disturbs the poet, and very particularly Telugu literature begins read poetry without politics. And not only one trend of politics we have seen, undergone, lifetime itself, the failed, the revolutionary politics to Dalit and feminist and also Telangana. How you internalize this kind of thing? And also, did you change any kind of idiom in the changing time, as I have seen that one, definitely that movement that very much influenced by dialect you're talking about it. Such a power, that kind of a subtleness I can see that. Like that, any kind of how yourself you transform, how you yourself live it to the times through your poetry.
Thank you for this question. I actually believe yesterday in the talk at CSPS, I actually said this: personal is political. There's nothing personal in any articulation. Even your body language is not actually personal. You move as the society commands, right? Every movement is a command given by the structures, already established structures, right? So, when I write a poem, of course, being a poet, I try to use symbols, imagery, and metaphors, right? So, this is a language that is not simple as we expect it to be. It's a complicated language. We actually borrowed this language from our previous traditions. So in classical Telugu literature, because I think it should be the same in other classical literary cultures. So your talent depends on how indirectly, how implicitly you articulate your feelings and emotions. Right? The story should be told like this, not straight. Right? So, but in 1990, we all experienced, in all the languages, we have all experienced that there is this shift that was happening around your neighborhoods. And then you started talking about it, started talking in a different language, right? So until then, I was talking like a regular, normal, like poet. And then after 1990s, when we have this term of identity politics, what now theoretically we are calling them post-Marxian identity politics. But I also, because trying to return to some of these ideas of class, not to go recently. So, my half of my literary life, there was always a debate about leftist politics. My family itself had this huge leftist legacy. So I was surrounded by leftist writings. I read Mayakovsky, I read Dostoevsky, I read translations that came from African languages. But my articulations until 1990, they were still abstract. I was actually trying to mimic the way world asked me to speak, the way they want to talk, right? So that language is always there. This is the poem I was reading, the accented word. When I made that statement, it's a theoretical statement. It's not a poem, it's a political statement. I actually want to explore my identity by retrieving my idiom. I always go back to this idea of mother tongue, right? But when you think closely, the mother tongue is not really mother tongue. Mothers were never allowed to speak out in our traditional settings. That took a lot of time so mothers could speak out, right? So that term I believe came in 1990. So that is the term when we started speaking in our real accent, right? And then when I moved to USA, the very first thing I noticed, because I was living in a neighborhood that is heavily populated by African Americans, Latin Americans. So these two identities were a big part of my growth as a student here in India. As you know, we all read African writing and then Latin American writings. What makes us read African writing here in India? What makes us read Latin American writing here in India? That is just because you are struggling about your own identity. So this I in identity, it's not a self, it's the community self. So what I learned from feminism, what I learned from Dalit politics, what I learned from minority politics, and then now Adivasi politics. They are being introduced to Adivasi poetry now, right? We have wonderful poets writing in Adivasi languages and also Adivasi life. So all these shifts, they are part of my personality. Not just as an individual, but also as a scholar and as a poet. So there is no way that I can leave them there and then I declare myself as some abstract human being. But my identity is now extremely concrete. There is no hide and seek in this kind of articulation, right? It's a very explicit statement. It's a direct, honest statement, right? Poetry is now any poem you take after 1996. Every line in a poem, even though sometimes poets say that, oh, you belong to some traditionalism, you belong to some ideology. No, not at all. Every poem, every line, every word, it is stressed, it is emphasized, it is stressed by politics, emphasized by politics, enriched by politics. So that's what I want to articulate even if I'm not art fiction.
Thank you, Afsar Mohammad, for your beautiful poetry as well as your thoughts you shared here on this occasion. Your poetry indeed is remarkable for the deep thought as well as fresh and especially rural imagery. and that still you go back to, because you currently are in metropolitan cities, but still you say and insisted on your memories, your childhood memories. So hearty thanks. The Kavisandhi with Afsar Mohammad ji ends here. On behalf of all of us and Sahitya Akademi, I thank you very much for being with us on this evening. And I heartily thank on behalf of Sahitya Akademi to all of you. Thanks a lot. Together we will have some tea. Thank you.
Thank you so much for making it. I also, please email me if you have any questions. I will be happy to respond. Thank you.